You're listening to Big World Network.
Phineas Frakture and the Dolomite, Episode 12. Written by Joseph Gatch. Read by Michael Young. Phineas Frakture's entrance into his classroom was heralded by whistles, catcalls, and other embarrassing sounds. "That must have been some date you had, Professor. Looks like she put up a fight. Was one day enough recovery time for you?" Phineas set his papers down and quieted the class. "Yes, it was a pleasant evening, and no, the battle scars are not her doing. I'll have you know that our night was cut short, due to an interruption beyond our control." "You mean the Dolomite attack? We heard they struck near the theater. We were afraid you were one of the missing. Well, some of us were." "Thank you for your concern," Phineas said sarcastically. "Now, I hope all of you took your extra day to refine your papers." There was a slight commotion as the door opened, and the headmaster nervously allowed 3 men dressed in black suits and long coats to enter. Phineas, already perturbed at losing a day of lecture, was less than cordial. "Headmaster Cockhall? What's the meaning of this intrusion? We were just about to review the principles of manicure Haleza physics. You are welcome to join us, if you like." The headmaster, however, gave the men a nod and scurried out of the room. "Professor Frakture, we are with the Imperial State Security, Division 5. Would you mind answering a few questions?" asked one of the men in black. "Yes, I would mind. I'm in the middle of something." A snicker went through the class, and the 2 other men glared at the students until it subsided. "This won't take long. Please, in your office." Phineas threw down his chalk and said to the class, "Chapter 10, then entered his office. He quickly took a seat behind his desk, keeping the authoritative playing field in his favor. The second and third men took up positions blocking the door, while number 1 sat in the chair opposite the desk, which was smaller and usually reserved for students. "I understand that you were in the warehouse district this weekend." "As were several hundred others." "Anything you'd like to share about your time there?" "Not necessarily," Phineas replied. "We know that you were involved in the incident, Professor. As were your friends, Miss Bentley and Mr. Patterson. We would like to know what you know." "Correction," said Phineas. "You would like to know if I brought anything back." "That would be helpful." "Helpful to create more of those monsters. Now, Professor, the army wanted an end to this reign of terror as much as the people did. And that is why they did nothing for 30 years? No, the army wanted to create more of those things, to unleash them on our enemies. But they got away from you. Or rather, you never had them to begin with." Phineas stood up, picked up a slender metal rod, and began pacing. "I know what they were intended for, and that the army had no intention of putting a stop to them. When are you people going to realize that this all has to stop? We create monsters. They create bigger monsters, bombs, killing machines." He leaned forward on his desk. "I'm glad they are gone, and that they will be forever out of your reach. The Dolomite have destroyed more than you can imagine. They should never have existed in the first place." Number 1 stood up and slammed his own hands onto the desk. "Now listen here. I'm tired of dealing with righteous punks like you, full of steam and fighting the system. Like it or not, the leaders of this nation know a hell of a lot more than you do about how to handle their enemies. You just sit here in the safety of your classroom, while the real men keep you safe with your ideals. If you have a problem with that, then we have ways of dealing with people like you," he said threateningly. Phineas's eyes narrowed. "Really? You seem to be forgetting something." "Like what?" "You are forgetting that the only man to stand up to the Dolomite and live is standing in front of you. You are forgetting that I alone destroyed an entire army of monsters that was unstoppable for over 30 years, with nothing more than a wrench and a little imagination." He flipped a switch on the rod, and an electrical arc began moving up the shaft. "Now, just think of what I can do to you and your army with this rod and a lot of imagination." Number 1 straightened up and put on his hat. We will be watching you, Professor, he said. Good day. The trio left the office, slamming the door behind them. Phineas heard his students scramble back to their seats after listening at the threshold. He quickly collapsed into his chair. Oh my God, I'm going to have a heart attack. He hyperventilated for a few moments and composed himself before exiting his office. As soon as he reappeared, his class stood and began clapping and cheering, much to his surprise. Whatever happened to you being a coward, Professor? Wellwood asked when the cheering finally died down. Well, as you can see, there are exceptions to the rule. Now let's get... Excuse me, Professor, said a secretary from the doorway. Oh, what now? Asked Phineas irritably. You have a call on the 8th of id. Fine. Class dismissed for the day, as it seems that everyone else's business takes precedence before your learning anything useful. He followed the secretary out of the class, followed by the animated chatter of how their stodgy professor was a hero and monster fighter. In here, sir. The call is waiting. Phineas sat down in front of the screen, and a familiar image appeared. Isabella, what's the matter? Hello to you too, Pinhead. Phineas flinched at her childhood nickname for him. I'm sorry. Hello, how are you, dear sister? All right, enough of your fake pleasantries. You're terrible at it. I heard the news. Is it true? Are they gone? His sister, now living in Chicago because of the fear of seeing the Dolanites again, had been on the mend for years. Yes, it's true. They're finished. I was there. Do you think Father's at rest now? A tear welled up in Phineas's eye. I'm sure of it. He wanted to tell her, let her know that he had seen him one last time, that their father still remembered them, but Phineas couldn't bear the thought of her having to think of their father as one of the Dolanites. No more nightmares, dear sister. We can move on. All of us can. Good. I'm glad it's finally over. Finn, what happened to your face? Did you blow something up again? Phineas touched the bandages dotting his face. Something like that. I need to go. Come and visit me sometime. I'll tell you about it. Maybe I will. Bye, Pinhead. Phineas gathered his things and walked out into the campus grounds. A shadow passed by, and as he looked up, an Imperial airship thrummed overhead. Maybe it was time to take a stand. Fight the system. Be a hero. Then his body reminded him of being thrown through the sewer in front of a ball of fire, and he thought, maybe not. He limped on, looking at the world around him. 2 words, ever present in his thoughts, came forth again. What if? Phineas Frakture will return in Phineas Frakture and the Curse of the Steam Hotep.
You're listening to Big World Network.